All right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me across the states in Nigeria. 9 new universities approved on the same day. The government froze new universities for 7 years and under enrolled campuses in a country where millions still can't get in. I ask, is Nigerians' higher education system being fixed or frozen? Again, I welcome you to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener, your executive producer, your chief writer. Name it. My name remains Kike Atanda-Owo. I think it's important for us to hear what on this day industry segment has for us. When I return, I give my 2 cents on this. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. I think my takeaway from this day initial segment is this Bakassi case with Cameroon that emphasizes the enduring endurance or enduring importance of respecting international rulings and diplomacy conflict relationship or conflict resolution, offering lessons for today's African border disputes where peaceful negotiation, can prevent bloodshed and strengthen regional stability. Well, because of minerals and natural endowments, to avoid dispute or conflict, I think it is very necessary for countries, to mark their land borders. That's my takeaway from on this day initial segment today. I think it's important for us to get a message from my sponsors, those who have put me on this platform. When I return, we'll dive straight to the topic at hand. Stay with me, I'll be right back. This is Real Talk with Kike. All right, many thanks for staying with us. The Federal Executive Council has imposed a 7-year moratorium on the creating new federal universities, polytechnics, and college of education. The education minister says Nigerian tertiary landscape is overcrowded, underutilized, and overstretched, with some institutions recording fewer than 100 JAM applications and other operating at less than half capacity. The aim that government insists is to accommodate or to consolidate resources, improve quality, and of course rehabilitate existing campuses. But the announcement came with a twist. 9 new universities were approved at the very same meeting, sparkling debate over policy consistency, access for underserved regions, and of course the balance between public and private education. And critics fear the freeze could worsen admission bottlenecks in a country with a rapidly growing youth population, while supporters argue it's the only way to stop the decay rather in academic quality. Today on Real Talk with Kike, I'm joined by a stakeholder in the tertiary education sector of Nigeria from University of Lagos, a distinguished historian and seasoned academic, to have a real talk on this policy, its implication for equity, quality, and the future of Nigeria's higher education system. But before we delve into real talk, I think it's important for us to play his profile. When we return, we will hear from him. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with us. Let me use this opportunity to quickly usher in my guest, Professor David Aworawo. It's a pleasure to have you on Real Talk with Kike today. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Many thanks for creating time to do this with me. I don't know, maybe the network is a bit erratic. I cannot see your face, but of course I can hear you. But let's dive straight to the issue at hand, because FEC announced a 7-year freeze on new federal universities, polytechnics, and of course, you know, the College of Education as well. But in the same breath, approved 9 new universities. I'm sure you must have listened to me when I was doing my openings, you know, because all of this was reported alongside the pending private approval. So from a policy consistency standpoint now is where my argument is coming from. What signals does this send to the sector and the public? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because shouldn't a freeze be absolute, sir, if the problem is actually, you know, proliferation? Or I don't know, what's your take on this? Because again, we saw how the education minister argues the challenge isn't access, but, you know, proliferation rather, and decay. Yet Nigerians' youth bulge keeps growing. How do we reconcile claims that access is sufficient without, you know, demographic reality and persistent admission bottlenecks? What data, sir, should we decide on regarding this issue at hand? What's your take on this thus far?
Well, thanks so very much. The government did well. There is need for some, you know, halting of the approval of new universities in Nigeria. It is one thing that the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has been advocating for quite some time, that we have enough universities now, even if they are not enough, we don't have enough funds to be able to take care of the existing ones. So establishing new ones stretches the available resources to be able to take care of, you know, the universities. So there has to be a way to harmonize the demand and then with quality. So what the government has done is in line with what ASU has been advocating, and that is that there should be some halting of the approval of the new federal universities, such that resources available can be channeled towards upgrading and improving the quality of the ones that are in existence. It doesn't make sense to establish universities that are just glorified secondary schools. They are unable to produce graduates that can match their counterparts around the world, and they just answer the name university. So what the government has done is in order, but one wonders why a government that recognizes the need to you know, reduce proliferation on that same day approving 9. So I mean, that's a contradiction. The second thing is the government will not be there in 7 years, so in line with how much resources will increase moving forward. All of those things will be, so it's something that should be subject to periodic review. But for now, there's a need to halt the proliferation so that resources can be channeled towards bringing up the ones in existence to international standards.
All right, I hear you, sir. The network is a bit erratic at your end, so I'm not sure that you were really audible to our audience. I would appreciate if, I don't know if calls are trying to come in, or I don't know the system you're trying to use. But quickly, with what you have just shared, I think I got a bit of glimpse with your submission earlier, or your insight. But I think what I would like to ask right now is the official side, you know, startling numbers as scores of university with fewer than 100 JAM applicants and dozens with 0, while 2.1 million applied overall in recent sessions. I would like you to explain this mismatch. What should the state do with chronically under subscribed institutions that merge that, you know, in terms of repurpose or close them down? What's your take on this? Because truly, about quality, what are the top 3 measurable quality targets that we can talk about? Let's keep it real, sir, on this platform, because that's why it's called Real Talk with Kike. Student staff ratios, you know, accreditation outcomes, the research outputs, you know, are they employable? You know, those are the things I feel that government should eat before lifting the freeze by what timeline. What's your take on this? Let's be real, because you are also in the educational sector right now, and you live and breathe there. You know more about all of this. Hence the reason why we have brought you on the platform today, to throw a lot of light on it. What's your take on this thus far?
There are different levels, really. One level is manpower. We have many universities that don't have quality manpower to be able to train and educate the students they have up to international standards. It was one of the reasons why the government took the decision to increase the retirement age of university lecturers from 65 to 70 for those who are able to attain by the time they are 65. So the younger ones, so that the sector can have more quality hands to be able to handle training and educating the students. So that is at one level. In fact, I've gone to certain universities that I joke with them and say, those who teach here need to be taught. People with just maybe masters, some with first degree, they are graduate assistant, they are doing the jobs of professor, so to speak. So that is one level, manpower. The second is infrastructure. In several universities, the infrastructure is just not there. It's mediocre, it's insufficient. So such that when people graduate, they do not have, the skill that they ought to have, given the certificates they are holding. And that is where the issue of whether somebody is unemployed comes in. When somebody does computer science and hasn't done enough in understanding the computer and the recent changes and developments in the field, the person can then not compete effectively with others when that person graduates. Of course, that also goes for several other courses that need laboratory equipment and the rest of them that they may not have. So that is the second level. The third level is funding. We know that the funding is inadequate, hugely inadequate. Sometimes the funds that are available for all the universities in Nigeria are not up to the funds that only one university in the US, has and utilizes. So I'm talking about 81 thereabouts in the federal universities in Nigeria. So you have 81 universities having funds that are not up to what one university has in the West. Of course, it will reflect in the quality of what they produce. So it is because of all of these reasons that there is a need for stopping proliferation. You talk about mergers, yes. For instance, there is a University of Transportation in Daura. Why don't you have a Ahmadu Bello University or another university in Katsina? That kind of thing. So I also agree with you that perhaps mergers will even be desirable at this point. The final thing to say, right, is that the students themselves, many of them are not taking advantage of available opportunities to be able to develop themselves. Unfortunately, the Gen Z, as they call them, many of them don't want to read. And so that's why you see that wide gap. You see 2 million, 30% or less, having the pass mark. So again, it's not just the number of people who have applied. The other issue is how many can be admitted, how many can really cope with the rigors of university life. All of these things are issues in the education system that need to be addressed. The one final thing I want to say about all of this is this. One challenge that universities have had, federal universities, of course, all universities
federal universities especially, is inability to meet their power needs. They spend so much money, but almost all of the money government gives them, they spend on power. The University of Lagos, UI, all of the universities spend about 400 million on the average on power per month. That takes virtually everything they have. The government gave a directive not too long ago that the amount for universities should be half. But up to after 6 months down the line, the minister has done nothing. And so the consequence is that laboratory for other equipment for infrastructure goes to paying for power, which the government already directed that, universities should pay half so they can have funds for other things. So there's a whole lot that needs to be done for the education sector to be sanitized, and of course, higher education in this context, beyond just putting that freeze on the establishment of new universities.
Right, many thanks again. Okay, before we go on a break, I think reports suggest a pivot to rehabilitate, existing infrastructure rather than funding new buildings. What governance or will I say procurement safeguards are needed so that it's clear to all of us what should become another spending cycle without visible results on campuses? And the reason why I'm asking this question is based on your last submission, and because I know funding is key, but what is that visible circle in terms of the result that you think will be viable in campuses? Quickly, in 1 minute before we go on the break.
Yes, there is need for accountability. The resources are not enough, and a lot of it is stolen too. So there is need for accountability. One way the government has done this is by insisting on the auditing of the accounts of the universities, so they can be sure that funds are used judiciously. That visit the universities periodically to be done the way they ought to be done. Unfortunately, for a long time, government failed to even ordinarily to say resume threatening a strike. Recently, for the last set of group that came to do an assessment to be able to do it. So these are things that need to be done. Government needs to insist on accounts being duly audited and then things being transparent, because of course these are the university belongs to the government. And then secondly, the other layer, which is those panels that normally send to university panels, we call them, they should ensure that they come as a when due. And when authorities on university also know that such checks are in place, they will be compared to fall in line, and there will be less corruption and more efficiency.
All right, many thanks again for that insight. We'll go on a quick break to get to reconnect with my guest, and when I return, the conversation will continue. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. This is Real Talk with Kike. All right, glad to know you're still right there with us. If you're just tuning in, this is Real Talk with Kike on Silverbird Live Television, and I'm your host, Kike Atanda-Owo. I've been having conversation with Professor David Aworawo of UNILAG, exploring the federal government's 7-year freeze on new federal tertiary institutions. And we've discussed, the policies, origins, and the controversy. Now, I'm going to be tilting towards, its long-term impact on quality, the access, and the balance between public and private universities in Nigeria. I want to say many thanks again to Professor David Aworawo, the HOD History in UNILAG, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies. I know that the network has been a little bit erratic. To my audience, please, we apologize on behalf of at both ends without no pointing fingers. Again, let me use this opportunity to open the phone lines. Remember, you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number that is showing on your screen right now. And of course, we're streaming live on Facebook, on Real Talk with Kike platform, and of course on Silverbird platform. Sam, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. All right. So Yeah, there's a lot of talk. There are talks of reviewing rules so polytechnics can award, B.Tech type degrees, potentially easing university pressure and elevating technical education. I must ask you, what risks and opportunities do you see in, blurring the university and polytechnic lines, and how might this affect, the labor market alignment? What's your take on this?
Well, the universities, they have their focus. Polytechnics also have their focus. Polytechnics, focus on technical, technical issues, technical courses, engineering, and the rest of them. They don't do law. They don't do, many of the courses that all those special courses. They don't do medicine, for instance. So they are not, their focus is different, and being at par is in order in their various, areas of interest. I also think that the polytechnics have not been well treated by being relegated, to the background, because they even spent 5 years. They spent 2 years for ND. After the 2 years in ND, they do go for trade. They become skilled because they know what they have done in theory. Then the return of that part is not a problem because they have their different areas of attention. And they all come together to enhance development, because if you just do, you focus on certain courses and you ignore certain others, what you likely will have is lopsidedness in the structure. So for the labor market, each one in his own place, so to speak. The ones who have done engineer will not come to the court to come and do the work of a lawyer, for instance, and the one who has a medical doctor. So universities have their focus, polytechnics have their focus. Being at par does not disturb anything, is in order. Of course, it will also even divert attention to the polytechnics when they know that they are accepted, to be at par. And for that's even what the regulations say. But over the years, the polytechnics are not being treated the way they ought to be. So I don't see them being put at par as a problem for the system. And like I said before, the problem should go around infrastructure, quality manpower to train and educate, and of course that is also motivated. And of course, the students themselves, their commitment to learning, so that when you hold a degree or a diploma, you'll be able to defend it. You'll be able to do what someone who holds that degree is expected to do.
Sir, but with 9 private universities greenlit, do we risk shifting access to those who can pay, while public campuses, are stagnant? Because what regulatory, or will I say funding levels, or how will I put it now, could actually protect equity now and prevent, a 2-tier system? Because with all that you've said thus far, let's bring it down to ASU. ASU has warned of a looming crisis over unresolved issues. You have kept it real thus far regarding, funding being important, transparency. Things are not enough, but they are still being embezzled. Could this, moratorium, become another flashpoint or a bargaining chip for systematic reforms? Because, we like to just say it as it is and keep it real as much as we can on this platform. Because, when you look at the end allowances, the autonomy of all the challenges that is going on with funds and the likes and all of that, what win-win sequence of reforms could lower strike risk while improving all outcomes? Because the reason why we are here today is because of improvement of outcomes. What's your take on this?
Yeah, like I said earlier, the action of the government is right, is correct. And ASU has studied the situation over the years and has advocated this for a long time, that federal government should stop approving more universities, federal universities. For private, there is no problem because it is for those who are able to pay, that would go there. There are now about 145, of such universities. The federal ones are, 70 something, close to 80, and the state ones are 67 or thereabout, close to 70. And so, but the private ones are for people who can afford it. And so there is no problem really. But the interesting thing is that even though there are so many, about 145 of them thereabouts, the percentage of Nigerian students that are in those universities are less than 25%. So whereas they are up to 60% of the total, they have a very small fraction of the number of students. And that is because their fees are quite high, people are unable to afford it. And the standards are not higher than those of public universities. Public universities have the more experienced staff. They may not have some facilities as much as some state universities, some private universities, but they are doing quite well, the public ones. So the private one, there is no problem. I mean, when ASU says more universities should not be licensed, they don't talk about private. Private, anybody who's studying university knows how it will get students, it will get funding, and all of that. Of course, NUC will go and accredit, and those ones that are below standards will be de-accredited, as the case may be. So that one is clear. The one that has issues are federal and government-owned universities, especially federal universities, where funds are too little to take care of the existing ones, and so the need to stop approving new ones then arises. Let available resources be channeled towards improving the quality of the existing ones in terms of facility, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of funding generally, and all of that. That is the only way that the university will produce graduates that will be able to compete favorably with their counterparts around the world. But the private ones, of course, those who can afford it will go there. If you listen carefully to what the minister said, the comments were not with regards to private universities. The comments were with regards to federal government universities. Of course, the federal government does not have control over states. When states establish their own universities, they should look for ways to fund them. But the action is right. The federal government does not need more universities at this time. It should use what it has, the resources available, to ensure improvement in existing ones, so that graduates not just be the name graduates, they will be graduates properly so-called that can defend the degrees they carry.
This will be my last question to you. If some institutions are overstaffed and there are a lot of under students, with many schools today, what is the academically responsible way to right size without politicizing staff audits or would I say punishing productivity department? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because for a learned like you, who is actually in the four corners of the school premises, should Nigeria consider performance-based funding tied to enrollment completion and research? That's my first question to you. My second question to you, because of time, because I know that you are also engaged at your end. What level of public reporting, sir, will you suggest on enrollments, accreditation, funding, graduate outcomes? Would you insist on, on this freeze? I don't know. And what objective actually triggers all of this that we are discussing right now in terms of, the lift that will up, the 7 years? Or do you think that this drift into this indefinite ban is what we should actually look for or look forward to bring that solid change that we are all seeking for? What's your take on these two questions?
Okay, the first, we need what we actually need. We need a bit of auditing. There are actually universities that are undersubscribed. Many of them are in the north. So many universities, everybody wants university in their own, zones and environments. without consideration, for, subscription. So we have universities that have many staff, and the students are too few. Usually, when the NUC goes to, assess universities or even government itself, they look at staff-student ratio. And there have been times that certain programs were deemed not to be viable and that they should close up shop because they are not viable. We have had things like that in the past. We need such audit at this time, such that government resources can be channeled towards where it is needed. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have a department that has maybe just 10 students and you have 18 staff. I mean, it is not in line with the guidelines for staff-student ratio. It's a waste of government resources. So the government needs to do that over again to be sure that existing universities and courses, should actually exist in line with subscription. If that is done, the measure I was talking about before can then be carried out. You don't have a university that doesn't have students, and then government resources are being, wasted on such schools. Where you have some that have so many students, and then no resource, they don't have resources to be able to take care of them. So that is needed at this time. Now you ask the question as to whether what the objective is. The objective is to have an education, a higher education system that produces graduates that are able to match their, peers all over the world, that are employable, that they can hold their own globally. That is the objective. So it's in line. Then he also asked whether this freeze in registering universities should be total ban. No, because society is not static. Society is dynamic. Population will grow. Needs will expand. Attention will be focused on some other thing other than what we have now. Before now, we didn't have AI, artificial intelligence, and robotics. We didn't have things like that. But the adjustments will be required, for Nigeria to be able to align its education system with the needs. So, and of course, with manpower needs also of the country and maybe even also beyond. So all of these things are the things that you guide what government does. There's need for audit. Now that the government has done this, there is need for audit. When the audit is done and there is sincerity of purpose, then funds can be channeled to where those funds are needed, and the overall impact on the system will be positive. And that is what we also advocate at our end. I mean, it's like somebody who is producing something that is substandard, you won't be happy. But if there is a system that will enable you to produce something that is of high quality, that will make you happy and give you a sense of satisfaction. So we support this, but of course, like I also said before, the government does not have the power to even make ban permanent. Even in 7 years, it's not feasible. The government will not be there in 7 years. The total number of years President who has is 8. He has spent 2. If he has a second term, he will only have 6 years from this point you are talking. So a new government will have its own focus, its own principles and policies, and will take action immediately. So all of these things are the things that will influence the system moving forward. The objective is efficiency. The objective is for the system to meet the objectives and the needs. And we are convinced that this action, along with an audit and channeling resources to the right course and ensuring that resources are judiciously utilized, all of this will have a positive impact on the education system.
Many thanks again for all your submission thus far. Thank you so much for creating time to do this with me. And this is where I move to the last segment of the show. I know that you are pretty much very engaged at your end, so you can't be excused. But thank you so much, sir, for your time, and wish you the very best as you continue to navigate the waters in the educational sector. So my trending story, which I'm changing to my take session, what caught my attention in that of the new tax policy on personal income tax, that is the PIT, that starts from 2026. And I understand that the concerns about the new 20% tax on incomes above, $800,000 will now be 1.16 billion, what's it called, facility as a whole. Without taxes, the government cannot function. Let's keep it real on this platform. I understand that the masses, have a trust issue with the government, and corruption in the system has worsened that relationship. However, no nation thrives on goodwill alone. Taxes fund, you know, they fund the good, the public good that we demand daily. When we protest bad roads or poor health care, we must ask, how will improvements be funded if not through taxes? This isn't about government greed. It's a social contract, if you ask me. Our daily, or our duty rather, you know, in terms of we paying taxes fairly when we earn above thresholds, you know, I feel government's duty right now is to use those funds diligently in a transparent manner and deliver services. Because I've seen comedian Pella's question, you know, on social about his 36 million naira tax bill, you know, that highlights a valid demand for accountability, not tax avoidance. So we should demand efficient governance, but we cannot reject our own role as citizens. If citizens, you know, evade taxes, the government it lacks, you know, means to act. If officials misuse funds, we must hold them accountable. Both are non-negotiable, if you ask me. So let's just not forget that they are the prices that we need to pay or that have been paid for civilization. Some of us travel abroad and we see what they use the taxes for in functioning system. You know, if I start counting all the things that I see abroad, you know, we will not finish this program. But progress needs partnership. We all need to come together. We fund the state serves the people. Don't let us just reject taxes outrightly. Instead, let's demand for transparency. So to move forward, you know, just to wrap up my thought process, I feel that the government needs to earn the trust of Nigerians with transparency and accountability. When that can be done, the people need to understand tax law and tax system, like this PIT update. So they can use channels like, you know, FRS for clarity and orientation for people to learn more, you know, and unlearn certain issues when it comes to how their money is going to be used. The people should be able to track government spending via portals like Open Treasury. Nigeria's greatness hindrances right now, if you ask me, is a shared sacrifice. So let's pay our fair share and then insist it builds the nation we desire to see today. Maybe that will reduce the brain drain that we are experiencing right now in our country. Let me just put my thoughts there right now. On this note, I think this is where I draw the curtains of the show. Many thanks to my resourceful guest, you know, Professor David Aworawo, the HOD History in UNILAG, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies. I want to say thank you so much for creating time to lend your voice to the educational sectors. And of course, you know, to all those by audience and everyone listening, please remain kind to one another. Put a smile on somebody's face. There's so much happening around us. People are really tense. They're overwhelmed with so many things. And I think that we must be intentional about how we keep each other happy and be kind to one another. Kindness does not take anything away from any of us. So let's be intentional. Let's be deliberate about showing somebody some kindness around us. Until I come your way next week, please stay safe and bye now. My name is Atanda-Owo.